Hello and welcome to Sunshine for Your Life. I have been talking about the Shepherd's Psalm, Psalm 23, talking about how Jesus is the Good Shepherd, talking about that we are the sheep of his pasture. There is a verse in this psalm that said, "He restoreth my soul." I'm going to read Psalm 23, just the first 3 verses, so you can get the context of that. It said in Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," meaning that we have no needs. Our needs are all taken care of. "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul." Now, what does that mean? It means sometimes we need to be healed. Sometimes we need to be restored. The Bible calls it being cast down when we are distressed. And lambs oftentimes get cast down. David, who was loved by God, who served God, talked about how it felt to be cast down. And in Psalm 42:11, he says, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God." Let me read that again. "Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God." Now, when we are cast down, we are down and out. We feel like we are down and out. And what actually happens is it happens to lambs too. And so David, the psalmist, talks about that. Any sheep that has been cast down, means he's lying down on his back, all fours up, and he can't get up. A lamb will lay down, he'll roll over, he'll have eaten, he will be resting, and he rolls over, and then he finds he can't get up. And he panics. He flails, he thrashes, he tries to roll around, and he can't do it. When the center of gravity changes in a sheep, it's impossible for him to get up. So the shepherd has to pick up the lamb, or it will die. As a matter of fact, it may die within 4 hours. So every day, the shepherd counts his sheep, and if there are any missing, then the shepherd hunts for it because it may be cast down. The shepherd knows how many sheep he has, and of course they're out grazing in the fields, so he's not beside each one of them to watch each one of them, but he counts and he finds out how many sheep he has, and if he finds that his sheep, that there's one missing, there's something not right, he immediately goes and searches for the one that's missing, because it's likely that it will be cast down. And when they are, and sheep are examined every single day. Before they go out for grazing, they are examined to see if they are capable and able to stand up on their feet. Because if they can't stand up on their feet, if they're ill or something is happening to them, then they have to be cared for in a special way. And it's not just the shepherd that's watching for a cast-down sheep. It's also the predators, the animals, the buzzards flying around. All of the enemies to the sheep are waiting for one to be cast down. And so the shepherd has to be careful and make sure his sheep are safe at all times, because if they're not and they get cast down, they will die and the animals will get to them. They lie down, a sheep will lie down comfortably, and they relax, and the center of gravity changes, and then they roll over, and they can't get up, and they panic, and they try to thrash about as much as they can, and they're in a very, very serious state. So gases build up in the stomach, it cuts off the circulation, and then they can't get up, they can't breathe right, and before you know it, they're gone in a very short time. Now, a lot of the information that I have for this series I've taken from Philip Keller's book called A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23. And what he mentions is the fact that as a shepherd, because he was a shepherd in the Middle East, he did raise sheep, and he would go and look at the sky and see if there were any buzzards flying around, if there were any birds, any predator birds. And if there were, then he would know that something was terribly wrong, and he would leave his sheep and go after the one that was lost or the one that was cast down. There would be one that would be missing. This explains the story of the shepherd leaving the 99 and going out after the one. There is a whole Bible story about that the shepherd who knew that there was a lamb in trouble, or a lamb had wandered off, or a lamb was cast down, something was wrong, and he would leave the 99 and go after the one. And when he found it, he would carry it back to the base camp. He would carry it back to the others. But first, the way that he took care of it, he would roll it over on its side. Once it rolled over on its side, or he got it to go on his side, that relieved the pressure of the gas in the stomach. Then he would rub the stomach, and he would talk to the animal and get it calmed down, because the animal was just panicked because they were like paralyzed. They couldn't move. So he would rub his stomach, then he would lift the animal up and get it on its feet. Now, by that time, the animal was all right, but oftentimes he carried it back to where the other lambs were. And he did that repeatedly. Any lamb that was off, any lamb that had strayed off, that was cast down, that was in trouble, he would do that to rescue them. Well, David uses that when he talks about the soul being cast down. He's talking about a person, but he's related it to a lamb. And what he's saying is that we get cast down too. Things happen to us that we can't control, that we're nervous about, and we thrash about and we panic and we don't know what to do, and we've got to solve the problem, we've got to do it now. And it gets to be a real problem. And so we have to rely upon the shepherd picking us up and taking care of us, because what God does for us is what a good shepherd will do to a lamb that is cast down. Lift the lamb up, turn it over on its side first, rub its stomach, get it comfortable, talk to it, get it calmed down, because lambs panic. If they're stressed out, they don't know what to do, they will panic and they will run. Then if they trip up and they lay down, something happens to them, they lose their balance, they're on their backs, and then that's the end of them, because they can die quickly. But what the Bible is saying is that we are like that ourselves. When things bother us, when we don't know what to do, we get very upset, and we kind of thrash around, and we do this and we do that, and we get all kinds of activity going, which may or may not solve the problem. But our emotions are always in turmoil. And so if we have the shepherd in our lives, if we are Christian, God can give us directions in what we can do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and keep us calm as he walks us through whatever problem we have. So the missing sheep is found, and the missing sheep is taken care of, lifted up. Sheep become cast down because they look for a soft spot to lay in. Sometimes it's a case of they're comfortable, they've eaten, they've had plenty of water, they just want to lay down and rest, and they try to take an easy place, a soft place to lay in. And it kind of relates to us in that we sometimes want to do the easy thing, not the hard thing. Sometimes we just want to relax and we don't care about what happens around us. We just want to relax. But when a lamb is looking for an easy way, it's not necessarily the best way. Sometimes the lamb just wants to lay down, but it loses its balance as it's resting, because it will lay down and start to roll over, and then it becomes cast down. Sometimes when we're looking for an easy way to do things, it's not necessarily the best way for us. And what happens is we just kind of lose our balance, lose our bearings, lose our perspective, and then we find ourselves in trouble just because we are trying to do the easy thing. The easy thing may be the best thing, but it may not be the best thing. We have to search out, if we're in trouble, if we have a problem, we have to search out the best way to handle it. And if we're just going to take the easy way, then a lot of bad things can happen. If you have a child that's in trouble, you need to be proactive and not say, well, they'll be okay, and I'll just let them go the way that they're going. You know, you have to give direction, you have to give comfort, you have to teach. And so it is with us. God has to teach us, God has to show us things, God has to show us the right way to go, and we need to be following that, whether it's easy or whether it's hard. We can become weighed down also because because we have so much that we're dealing with. And a lamb does the same thing. Sometimes a lamb is so heavy laden with fleece that they can get cast down easily. A lamb has to be sheared. They have to be shaved. And it's not fun for the lamb. They do not like to have it done to them. It's hard work for the shepherd. Nonetheless, they have to have it done. But when it's finished, everybody is relieved, and the lamb now feels free. And they're very excited about that. They don't feel like something's weighing them down. They're freer. They're more comfortable. They kind of prance around. They're happy about it. So even though the process of getting there was difficult for them because they do not enjoy the process where they are sheared, but when it's finished, then they're very happy about it because they feel so much better. And sometimes in our own lives, we get so bugged, we get so drawn down by so much that's on us that we have to have a different way of functioning. We have to give up some things. We have to make our lives simpler. We have to do that which is right and just not heap more and more and more upon ourselves to do. I know a lot of people, and a lot of my friends are what you'd call type A personalities, and I am myself. That means no matter how busy you are, there's always something more that needs to be done. You don't take out time to rest. And I know the Bible says, Jesus said to his disciples in the New Testament, "Come ye apart and rest a while. Take a break. Don't be so overloaded that you lose your perspective and everything is just another thing to do." If you're so busy that things that you enjoy, you don't even enjoy anymore, they just become another thing to do, then you're in danger of having overloaded yourself. And the sheep, when they get overloaded with their fur, with their fleece, and there's just so much of it and they're weighed down, they can't feel free. They're like carrying a weight. So the shearing process takes that weight off from them. And for the human being, we get sheared in a sense. Our weight is lifted from us when we are able to just give our problems to God and let him solve them and not be frantic about what's going on in our lives. What we have to do is say, God, you're the one who is in charge. You handle my problems. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, but you handle my problems. And then after that, you can feel free because you don't have to worry about things. You placed your problems in his care, and he takes care of them. There is a statement that I use sometimes, and it's this: every night I give my problems to God. He's going to be awake all night anyway. And if he's going to be awake all night anyway, I don't have to worry about anything. He has those things in his hands. Now, when I was counseling people on a regular basis, I was a board-certified counselor for years and had my own counseling practice and was also associated with 2 other counseling centers. I used to take some of the people that I worked with and said, make a cross, any kind of cross, cardboard, paint one on paper, whatever, put a basket underneath it, and every night before you go to bed, take all of your problems, write them out on paper, put them in the basket. Now what you've done is symbolically put your problems at the foot of the cross. And a lot of people felt a lot better when they did that. Okay, this is your problem now. I'm not carrying this problem alone. I had a friend of mine who was a first-grade teacher, and she had a child that was crying, and it wouldn't stop crying. And this child, this little boy, kept crying every single day. You expect first graders, when they first come to school, to cry. They're away from their mothers, a lot of them, for the first time. But this boy couldn't get over it. He just couldn't get over it. So for weeks, he was crying, and it became a distraction, and it was a problem for her teaching. It was a problem for the other students who had long adjusted to the fact that they were in first grade. So what she did was she took an apron, she put an apron on, and it had a huge pocket in it. And she went up to the little boy and said, I don't know what your problem is, but why don't you put it in my pocket? Because if you put your problems in my pocket, you don't have to think about them anymore. I have them in my pocket, and we can keep them there, and you don't have to fear anymore. And the child, for some reason, got the idea of what the symbolism meant, and he took his little hands, and he cupped them, and he put them right, and put his hands in her pocket and supposedly left his problems there, and he never cried again. She kept the apron in her closet for the rest of the year. And he never asked to have the problems back. He could have if he'd asked for them, but he didn't want them back, and he was fine for the rest of the year. So just the symbolism of that. And God makes it possible, give your problems to me. I care for you. I'll take care of them. Don't worry about everything. Let me take those problems. And he says that in various scriptures. So we just need to remember that. Sometimes we become weighed down too much. And it's just something that we shouldn't have to worry about. We should just give our problems to God. Now I know, and I've read, that the shepherds used to make flutes. And the flutes that they made were made out of grasses and shrubs. They used to weave them together. And they would make sounds. And the thing with the sounds is it gave comfort to the sheep to hear the music. It gave recreational activity to the shepherds as they were sitting there, maybe under a tree, making music. But of course, these flutes didn't stay together. They would get dry. They would dry up. They would fall apart. But a shepherd would never throw a flute away. What they did was take fresh grass and fresh shrubs and reweave the flute so it was good again. And that's what God does for us. When we're having a problem, he doesn't toss us away. What he does is put us back together. That's part of the restoring process. Put us back together so we can function normally, just like the shepherds used to reweave the flute so they would play again. But they would never toss them out. So when you feel down and out and things are happening to you and you don't understand it and you feel weighed down, God is not going to toss you out and say, oh, well, another problem, deal with it. You can handle it on your own. He's intimately involved in our lives. He loves us. He wants to be there for us. He will restore us. And if we have been fractured for some reason, we've been abused or something's happened to us that's bad, he puts us back together again. And that's what the Bible does. It's a part of his love that he functions in that way to restore us. When the Psalm says that he restoreth my soul, he restores your emotions, he restores your feelings, he restores you as a person, because the soul, part of the body, is a good part of the body, very important. You're not just a physical body, you have a mind and you have a spirit. And you need to be restored when things happen to you, and God will do that for you. So sheep also, I want to mention, are creatures of habit. They'll follow the same path over and over and over again, to the point where they actually can destroy pasture land. They won't vary, they won't move from their spots unless they're forced to do so. And the same is true of us. We get into a pattern and we stay on that pattern, whether it's good for us or whether it's not good for us, whether it's healthy or whether it's unhealthy. The sheep have to be forced to get off from that pattern and go somewhere else. So sheep are moved about once a week, because they will eat the grass to the point where it's on the ground, and they will actually gnaw at the grass to the point where the roots are damaged, and then the grass doesn't grow right. So in order to preserve the pasture land, and it's also better for the sheep to give them fresh pasture, they will be moved every week. Otherwise, you get a little pathway where the sheep are, and then that turns into a rut, and they will follow that rut until doomsday if they're not forced to get off from it. And then that becomes a gully, and the pasture land is destroyed. When a sheep grazes, they can do wonderful things for pasture lands. But if they stay there and they don't make changes and they don't move, they can also destroy the pasture land. So what the shepherd will do is they will move them and once a week, so that they will have their own fresh pasturage. And the sheep is always excited when they get to a new place. They jump and they frolic because this is new and it's fresh and it's pure and it's clean and it's something that they like. So it's good for them, and it's good for their morale as well. So a shepherd will move the sheep, and they'll also inspect the sheep every single day to make sure that they're healthy. And if they're not healthy, they'll take remedial action to make sure that the sheep is okay. And they will get them into what's called a base camp. Now, I've shown pictures before about a little area where they call the sheepfold, and where the lambs can be. So they let the sheep graze during the day, and at night they bring them all into that sheepfold, and they inspect every single one. Every sheep is accounted for. Every sheep is treated for anything that might be wrong for it. Oil to prevent insect bites. If there's an injury, it's treated, and the shepherd inspects every single lamb. So they're out in pasturage during the day, and they're back at the base camp at night, and then he stays with them. They're enclosed, they're safe, he has a watchful eye, and so it's total care of the sheep. So if you're cast down, God will take care of you. God will make sure that you're all right. God will treat you for any emotional distress that you may have. He'll lead you to the right doctors if you have a problem, a physical problem that you need care for. So it's the total care of the sheep that the shepherd provides. And sheep cannot make it on their own. Sheep cannot take care of themselves. They have to be cared for by the good shepherd who takes care of every part of their existence. So I'm going to close it here, and we'll continue with this next time. And I just want you to get the concept of how God and Jesus as the good shepherd takes care of us as the sheep of his pasture. And I even have a little drawing here that illustrates that. So I will close for now. Please join me next time.